Hello and welcome. In this video, I wanted to share with you a second sketchbook tour of my mixed media sketchbook, which I completed several months ago. This is a mixed media sketchbook by Holbein. It's spiral bound and it does not contain a lot of pages, so it didn't take me too long to finish it. What I like about mixed media paper is that it's great all around for wash, for glue, for all kinds of media. What I don't like about it so much is the price per page. So for the same price, you'll get a craft paper sketchbook, which is also very durable with glue and paint and so on, with a lot more pages than you would a mixed media sketchbook. But other than the price, I really liked working in this sketchbook. On this first page of the sketchbook, I used some acrylic paint and I used hot pink and gold and some yellow. And since the colors mixed a bit, the gold became a little bit orange. And I also put a stripe of sort of like a tape, a fabric tape on the side with a flowery pattern. And then I doodled over it with a technical pen. On the next pages, as you can see, I'm using a lot of acrylic paint in these pages. I sort of dabbed on using a brush, some gold, some pink, some red over a light blue background, and then I doodled these leafy shapes over that and blocked in some black behind those leaves. I really like that leafy page. And this next page, I don't love it too much. I was experimenting with creating hard edges between the red and the light blue. This next page I really like. I used several colors and I sort of covered the whole page with patches of different colors. And then when I doodled over it, you can see that sometimes my doodle referred to the way the colors were patched onto the page. I like this part where you can see there's this building and it's a night scene and you can see this rabbit and he has a suitcase and he's going to the airport. I don't know, this page, I guess I was feeling creative and happy when I made this page or this spread. On the next two pages, I used my Letra Set Pro markers, which are like Copic markers, and I experimented with going outside the lines and creating some sort of design. I guess I wasn't too thrilled with this, so I went back to acrylic paint. And again, I experimented with all sorts of backgrounds and then doodling over those backgrounds with a technical pen. This next page, or these next two pages, look a lot similar to the previous patchy page, but this one also contains gold in the background. And also, in addition to using the black technical pen, I used white ink. This next page, you can see that the background is a little bit muddy. The colors are sort of undefined and brown and messy. That's because I was taking colors from a palette that my 4-year-old niece used, and she kind of mixed up the colors, and I wasn't being too meticulous, so the colors sort of got mixed up. I used a dip pen and dark blue ink to make this doodle. And working with a dip pen gives more line variation, so it makes the lines more interesting, but it does take a little bit longer than working with a regular pen or even a technical pen. These next two pages, I experimented with washi tape. So in one of the pages, I just laid down some stripes of washi tape, and in the other one, I cut them up and filled the surface with different lengths of strips of washi tape. In this next page, I used Sakura jelly rolls, and the type of jelly rolls I used is Glaze. So the Glaze jelly rolls have a shiny finish, and you can feel the texture of the finished doodle. I remember that when I doodled this, I felt like half the gel in the pens was used up just by making this doodle. The second page is made using Souffle jelly rolls, and they have more of a chalky look to them, but they're also raised. And the way they look when they're wet and the way they look when they're dry is different. This is how they look when they're dry, sort of chalky looking, pastel-y. Again, with the glaze, I created all sorts of boxes, and in each box filled it in with a different design. This next page is an experiment with a brush pen I had, trying to get thick and thin strokes and seeing what I could do with it. I don't think I went very far with the brush pen at this time, except for this next page. So here I used the brush pen to create thick and thin lines, and then I filled in each of those areas with Faber-Castell Pitt markers, and then doodled over each area with the technical pen. Here again, I was using up leftover paints that my niece left after she finished her arts and crafts session, and after painting the acrylic background, I doodled over it with black and white ink. Here again, you can see the muddy colors from using up the paint from my niece's palette. I created all sorts of weird looking sea creatures and doodled around them. This page is circles in Faber-Castell Pitt markers, and then doodles using a technical pen over an acrylic background. So I like how the color of the Faber-Castell markers looks over acrylic background. They're both colorful, but they look different. These next two pages were experimentation with, again, an acrylic background, and over that I used several Uniposca paint markers. I don't really love the result, but I like that I experimented. This next spread sort of looks like a sky to me a little bit. You can see that the pages got glued together and one page tore off a piece of the next page. And I made these leafy shapes using acrylic ink. I don't really love acrylic ink because it's really hard to clean it off of the nib of the dip pen. This next page is another leafy doodle, and the page after that you could see that I first doodled over the white paper, and then I used acrylic paint to fill in the background while trying not to go over the black lines. So I was starting to have some confidence with my brush and with my paint, and I wanted to see if I could be very precise with my brush strokes and fill in only the background. Here is a doodle that is made completely in white ink using a dip pen. I think when the background is dark enough, the white ink looks really nice. And the next one is a technical pen doodle. These next pages, I experimented with some lettering and my usual style of doodling in an 0.5mm technical pen. And you can see here where I started drawing borders around the page. I started doing that, I guess because of the spiral. I like to have the border of the page, but I didn't want to cross the spiral. Here's a completely different style. There is a little bit of acrylic background, but you can hardly see it. And then I used some Liquitex paint markers to create these blocks, and then some stripes in all sorts of directions, doodly stripes and circles with a technical pen. I like that experiment. Here again, it's a little bit similar to the one a few pages ago, where I drew the doodle before the acrylic background. And I also used a paint marker to create those circles and squares. And in the next page, you can see a leafy pattern that I also drew using a dip pen. And the squares in the corners were a result of some ink dripping in one of the corners, so I wanted to cover that up. And here again with the doodly design and with the hard edges of the color around it. I like how the boxes are offset from the doodle itself. Here's another 2 pages of doodling. So here I did a lot of the triangular doodle pattern and sort of a sea monster shape. And in this one, I thought I'd do a sort of all over pattern of scallops with a black background. This one I really like. I like the color of the background and the way that it looks, the texture of it. I felt on that day that I really wanted to do something repetitive, so I made these swirls and colored in between them. And then on a whim, I decided I'd leave sort of like some area between them unfilled, and it ended up looking like a meandering river, and I like it. This is a pretty typical page, starting to get typical of mine, of a doodle in a 0.5mm technical pen. When I doodle over acrylic paint, it can be a bit challenging to work with technical pen because the technical pen gets clogged easily with little particles of paint. This next page I really love. I remember I was feeling really confident with the pen and with the flow of the doodle. I didn't plan it in advance. I just went with it as I went along. And you can see there are all sorts of like ropes going from here and there behind objects. I really like that there's one area that's really dark and one area that's lighter. Here in this next one, you can see these ropes or strips of a pattern that seem to go behind other patterns. The way I do that is usually I draw first the things that are in front and then I do the things that are behind. I really like the flow in these two. Here again, you can see some more ropes or flowy long strips of the same doodle pattern along the doodle. I really like this style of doodling where there are a lot of details and a lot of things are intertwined. And there's also this rabbit and he's wearing a space suit. And here I thought I'd try some negative space and dark black, and I think I was really happy or excited about it at the time, but then I think people on Instagram didn't love it so much. So this is a spread where I applied the acrylic paint like a wash, so I diluted the acrylic paint a little bit, and I really like that sort of muted background, and then I doodled over it, but leaving a lot of blank space. Here again, I went crazy with some glitter that my niece left over from an arts and crafts session of ours. I glued the glitter down by laying glue down, then putting the glitter and then laying some more glue over that. And doodling over glitter is a little bit of a rough surface. This next one, I guess I just wanted to draw some squares and fill them in. And this is another typical doodle inside of a boundary inside the page. This was made by my 4-year-old niece. And this one is sort of, I like to think of it as amoebas or something you can see under a microscope. So each one is like a tiny doodle on its own, and together they look like they're a colony of some bacteria or something like that. And on the back cover, I just wrote one word and used some acrylic painted strips of paper to create a border around it. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what kind of videos you'd like me to share here on my channel. If you enjoyed watching, please leave a like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you next time.